Andy is the CEO of 3Believe and is going to come and tell us all the new and exciting news of 3Believe. So, Jason, it's all yours.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody being here. As always, your time is precious. You only have so much of it. And so I want to respect the time that you take. And I treat it with respect. And I always try to give you some good information. I want to remind everybody who we are. We're 3Believe. We are a unique company. I was reminded over the last 3 days of how unique we really are. And we're going to talk about some things that might surprise you, might even upset some of you. So be prepared. If you're easily emotionally invigorated, I want you to bear down and get ready. It won't be disrespectful, but it won't be politically correct by any means. And so let me tell you where I've been. This last 3 days, we were invited up to an event of Idaho's largest employer, had a health event, a health fair for their employees. You see, employers have a tough row to hoe these days. One, because health insurance costs just keep on going higher and higher and higher. Now, I don't need to tell you that. You see the prescription costs going up. You see your contribution that you're paying. You see Medicare benefits reducing and your premiums are going up. It just doesn't stop. It's getting worse. And so we're not going to talk about what Congress needs to do and what plan they need to activate or discontinue. We're going to go in a different route. We're going to talk about what squarely rests on our shoulders. You see, employers, many of them, are self-insured. Now, what that means is that means that the employer is big enough that they have enough employees that when they go to an insurance provider, like let's just say Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and they say, I want you to assess my employees. I want you to give me a premium because I want to give my employees health coverage. I want them to be covered. And because I want to give them a benefit to working here over working somewhere else, and plus I want to reward them because I love my employees. And so the insurance company will do a health fair. What they're doing is they're going to do a blood test, and they're going to look for some precursors, some biomarkers they're called, that basically put the insurance company at risk. They want to know how bad and how much it's going to cost the insurance company to insure this body of people that work for this employer. And so they're looking for total cholesterol, and they're looking for the level of glucose in the blood. They're looking for how much they weigh, and they're looking for whether they smoke. And those are the primary issues that they're looking for. Let me also. They'll also look for if the woman wants to have maternity insurance, coverage for pregnancy. That's the only other non-physical or current condition. Now they go back and they go to their actuary tables. Now actuary tables are just facts that are really absolute. It tells these pencil pushers what is the likelihood of you coming down with measles or with a sore throat or with cancer or with whatever ailment. And then they go back and they look at what expenses are for hospitals to treat that condition. And then they come back to the employer and say, well, it's going to cost you this much money. And then the employer says, all right, well, I can afford it or not afford it. One of the tricks is that they're going to go and say, I want to be self-insured. I'm going to be my own little insurance company, and then I'm going to go back and get a second party insurer or reinsurance on my policy in case I really have a bad year and we got a lot of people that are really sick and it cost me millions and millions of dollars. I want someone to insure me against that loss. And most employers that have a couple of hundred employees are starting to be self-insured because they can't afford medical costs. They just can't do it. And so, in doing that, now the employer has a really active role on wanting his employers or her employers, not to be sexist, there are women out there that own companies, and they have a real motivation to have their employees be healthy. And so they have these health fairs. Now, the health fairs are one to check and see how healthy their body of employees are, but also to motivate them. They want them to stop doing that and start doing this. And so they'll have different programs. You may be part of an employer that has that, or you know someone that is. And so the largest employer of Idaho, heard about us. I don't know how they heard about us, but they invited us to come out and motivate their employees to get healthy. And so as they were going through and having their blood test done, and then they would go to each one of the stations, and then they would be advised. I would overhear what these hospitals, there was a local hospital, and I won't say who it was, but these were people that were, nurse practitioners or just a hired phlebotomist or a counselor. And they would ask them questions that sadly had little to do with a remedy to their problem. They talked about things like this. Are you eating healthy? Are you trying to eat your vegetables and fruits? Okay. Are you cutting down on your soda pop? Good. Good. Keep that up. What about exercise? Are you exercising? Now, truth be told, what effect is that going to have on these people? I got to tell you, none. Now, how can I be so bold to say none? And the reason I can say none is simply because if you look at the national average, if you look at what is happening to our country, you will find that our nation is getting worse as far as health. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. We're getting sicker and we're getting less healthy. And so that's one clue to the fact that our current wellness programs that are in place are not working. Now, 200 years ago, we didn't have people that had diabetes like we have. We didn't have people that had heart disease and cardiac arrest and high blood pressure. For heaven's sakes, we didn't even have the medication to treat those things. So how in the world did we survive? Well, it's because we didn't have the eating habits and the foods that we have today. And so I learned, or I should say I was reminded of an important element, that it is us that's absolutely responsible for the level of health that we have. Now, there are situations, and I'm sensitive to those out there that may be listening, that have been handed a genetic bad card. They do exist, but they are rare. And we need to have empathy and sympathy for those that have that situation. But I want to cut through the malarkey, and I want to draw a line in the sand, and I want to clear the air, so to speak. So who are we? We are 3Believe. We've been at this crazy game for 9 years. We've been teaching employers, we've been teaching doctors and nurses and hospitals and clinics how to treat the symptoms of metabolic syndrome without medication, without surgery. We've been teaching them how literally thousands of clinical studies have absolutely identified how you can reverse these symptoms through food. You see, it was food that got us into this mess, and it's food that will get us back out. And so that's who we've been. We have a special little niche in this industry. We have the ability to block carbohydrates and and fats, prohibiting the digestive enzymes in your stomach from breaking down the carbohydrates and fats. And then we have what we like to call a a meal replacement, a complete meal replacement product. And we call that your CMR. And it is, with no exaggeration, the finest meal replacement powdered meal that you can get. There is no substitute when we're talking about quality. I keep on pulling up new products, and I put it on a fair ingredient by ingredient comparison, and well, there's no one's come up to claim the throne yet. And so we're proud of that, and you should be too, with the results that it's been able to provide. So having said that, let me go and give you an example of what I'm talking about when I said I might offend some. I went looking on the website. I want to narrow in on one particular topic because they talked a lot about it at this health fair that we had. They talked about type 2 diabetes. So let's talk about that for a second. Now I'm going to read from some websites. Now these are found on hospital sites, National Association of Diabetes, some pretty credible names. So what in the world am I doing about knocking their door and stirring up the pot? Who am I? Well, I am a person that simply read 600 of the 20,000 clinical studies that have argued the points that I'm going to bring up tonight, that have gone against what these people are saying. So here's some facts. Nearly 400 million people around the world have type 2 diabetes. Now, about 30 million of those are in the United States. And as many as 8 million are walking around in the United States that don't even know they have type 2 diabetes. And without proper treatment, it can truly wreck and cause havoc on the entire body and in every way. Affecting everything from your hearing to your vision to sexual function, to your energy levels, to your balance, to the pain level that you have. The list goes on and on. It does not stop. It is, by the way, the leading cause of blindness, amputations, and kidney failure. And it can, if you have type 2 diabetes, it can triple the risk for heart attack and stroke. But it can be taken care of. Now, here's some things I want to read right off a website. Number one, this is the banner. It's not your fault that you have type 2 diabetes. Starting insulin is not a sign of failure, it says. It is not something you cause. It is something that is it is not something that's always preventable. Okay. It is absolutely your fault. I know. I don't mean to hurt your feelings. Now, there's a difference between something being your fault and you doing it on purpose. I'm not saying that anybody did it on purpose, but it is absolutely your fault. Let me draw an analogy. You see the siren. You don't see a siren. You see the lights and you hear the siren of a police officer behind you and pulls you over, and you roll down the window and he says, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And you say, "It wasn't my fault." Well, and the truth is, it is your fault. You're the one that put your foot on the gas and not on the brake, and you exceeded the posted speed limit. You got type 2 diabetes because of what you did, of what you ate, and how much of it you ate for a particular period of time. It is not my opinion. It is absolutely, undeniably proven through thousands of clinical studies. So I'm not saying that it means that you're a bad person. Not in any way does it mean that. It just means that it's your fault. But it also means that you can reverse that and not have it be your fault anymore. Or the cause of the solution can be your fault as well. I'm going to read on. Now, this gentleman has a PhD from the University of California. He is the founder of the Behavioral Diabetes Institute. Behavioral Diabetes Institute. He's the head of it, and says that many people equate insulin with illness. Okay? He says studies have shown that 1/3 to 1/2 of people who are prescribed insulin are unwilling or reluctant to take it, while healthcare providers may blame fear of needles for this response. Research has shown that the number one reason is the sense that insulin signifies personal failure and a worsening of diabetes. All right. Now, I'm not going to talk about personal failure. All right. These people may feel that if they take the insulin, it might signal. I don't know what they're feeling. That could be very legitimate. I wouldn't say that it's true if they feel that it's a personal failure. However, they are right if they are thinking that it was a worsening of diabetes. If you take insulin and you have type 2 diabetes, it is going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Insulin does not cure diabetes. You talk to any, this PhD, for example, and you ask them a simple question. If I have type 2 diabetes, or let's just say type 1, for example, and I take insulin, will it cure me of that disease? The answer is absolutely not. It won't cure it. It is a treatment for it. Now, I'm not advocating that you stop taking insulin if you are type 1 or type 2 diabetic. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is let's be finite and accurate in our speech. And our speech is that taking insulin when you're a type 2 diabetic will worsen the condition of diabetes. I'm also going to say that taking insulin is not the only treatment for type 2 diabetes. Why don't we think about doing something other than taking insulin? What about changing the lifestyle that caused us to have type 2 diabetes in the first place? Let me continue. This website said, number 2, it's safe. Taking insulin is safe. If type 2 diabetes runs in your family, or you live in a community where it's common, you've likely heard stories along the lines of, they put grandma on insulin, then she went blind and died. Now, that could be a very true situation. That happens thousands of times. So am I to say that that's the cause is insulin? I'm saying that studies show that insulin can worsen the case. I'm not saying that that's a reason to stop taking it, however. So if you're here listening to this call and you become a little fearful of what I'm saying and what I will continue to say, that insulin is a risk to your health, do not, and I will repeat, do not stop taking your insulin. What I want you to do is I want you to consider that while you're taking your insulin, that you investigate other treatments so that you can stop and reduce the amount of insulin that you're taking until eventually you're no longer on it and you've eliminated the risk factors that are associated with taking insulin. Okay? Let's go on with Grandpa dying. The sad truth is that if Grandpa had started insulin 10 years earlier, the article says, he'd probably still be with us today. Now, that's probably true, but he'd have other situations that were caused by the insulin. It's waiting too long to control blood sugar. That opens the door to complications, not the insulin itself. Okay, this is just absolutely untrue. Or should I say, half of that sentence is untrue. The first part is true. It's waiting too long to control the blood sugar. That is absolutely true. Blood sugar elevated for an extended period of time is a terrible thing on your body. It's just not a good thing. If your blood sugar is high for a long period of time, it damages your cells in a catastrophic way. So taking insulin as a temporary fix is a very reasonable approach. But the last half of the sentence is inaccurate, where it says, not the insulin itself is opening the door to complications. That just flies in the face of thousands of clinical studies. It's just not true. The article continues. It's definitely not true that you will develop complications from diabetes faster once you start insulin. In fact, insulin is the best drug we have to treat diabetes and prevent complications. All right, I agree. Insulin is the best drug to best treat diabetes, but it's not the best treatment to control it. Now, see what I said different. I'm suggesting that you try a different treatment other than drugs. How about food? How about what causes the presence of the sugars in your bloodstream in the first place? You see, if you didn't have elevated sugars in your blood, then you wouldn't need the insulin to control it. You can live without increasing your blood sugar levels. You can. Your body will do just fine without it. In fact, if you never, from this moment on, let's just say that we all raise our hand and pledge our allegiance to the absence of carbohydrates in our diet, we would live just fine as long as we replaced what we lost with the carbohydrate with another macronutrient. And that could be from protein and from fatty acids. We can do that. Our bodies are adapted to do that, and we will live, even thrive, without it. Now, as long as the other things you lose when you stop taking carbohydrates, you replace. Let me give an example. Let's say that you no longer, you pledged allegiance to the anti-carb theme here, and you don't take orange juice anymore. Now, I'm talking about the good stuff. I'm talking about the Florida fresh squeezed by an 8-year-old girl that has a heavenly voice, and sunshine shines out of her eyes. She's so cute and pure. It squoze by her, and you drink it. It couldn't be more purified. Okay? You would do just fine without that if you replaced what else comes along with that orange juice. Now, there's good things that come along with that natural source of those carbohydrates. There's vitamins and there's minerals that come along with it. There's fibers if we're eating it, like some breads or a complex carbohydrate. You see, as long as we replace the peripheral, the associated macro and micronutrients that come along with a heavily concentrated carbohydrate, we will do just fine. We'll do fantastic. And what's one good way we can do that? Well, one of them is called the CMR. And you have that on your website there at a company called 3Believe. Was that a blatant advertisement for us? I apologize for that. Let's go back to this article. It says the main problem is that we start too late, Dr. Colleran says. After complications are evolving, patients, family, and society then associate insulin use as a cause of the complication. In reality, if we use it earlier in the game, we could likely prevent any of those complications from getting patients under control more quickly. Now, that is a true statement, but it's not the only solution. You can go on insulin earlier to control your glucose levels, or you can try another approach and reduce the amount of carbohydrates in your diet, not requiring as much insulin and requiring your body to secrete glucagon, which is the counterpart to insulin, that does not have the devastating effects that insulin can when there's too much of it. That's what I'm proposing. Is, you see, when you go out into these groups, they are unfortunately only telling you half of the story. They're not telling you the other options that are made available, and I really don't understand why. They have an agenda that just doesn't seem to make sense to me. The doctor continues to say that historically clinicians have used insulin as a threat to scare patients into an improved lifestyle. This misguided approach has led to an insulin being used as a last resort. People are creeped out by insulin, Dr. Polonowski says. But attitudes are changing, says the clinicians, are now painting insulin as a valuable treatment, not as a punishment, early in the disease course. And sadly, that is absolutely true. Attitudes are changing, and they're seeing that taking insulin is acceptable. Let me tell you a trend that is a reality that is absolutely frightening. I told you earlier tonight, or earlier on this call, that about 30 million Americans have diabetes right now, with another 8 million walking around diabetic without knowing. That's type 2 diabetes. Remember, that's 38 million people. In the next 20 years, that number is expected to balloon to over 100 million. 34% of our population will be diabetic. That is a horrible event. In a short 20 years, that is what will happen. That is because of what we're eating. It is not because we're evolving. It's not because of what's genetic. Earlier in here, it read that if type 2 diabetes runs in the family, or you live in a community where it's common, almost as though that it's airborne, and if your neighbor has it, you're going to have it too. Or let's go on further and say that, well, mom and dad had it, grandpa had it, so I'm going to have an increased chance of having it. Studies have absolutely proven that if you have diabetes in your family, yes, it is absolutely true that your chances of having it have increased. But it's not genetic reasons, it's lifestyle reasons. The reason why grandpa and mom and dad had it is because of the way that they lived in their little family community, by what they ate. Sitting at the table, the family all eats the same food. And if that food is heavy laden, and the national average right now, there's 65% of your calories on a daily basis is coming from carbohydrates. That is more than 3 times higher than it should be. That is a gross exaggeration of how many carbohydrates we're supposed to have and should have. And so what happens is that mom, let's say that you just, mom's fried chicken, breaded in flour, deep fried, and then that potatoes and gravy and corn on the cob, or corn, and then you've got dessert that's heavy laden with sugars. That diet, which is so yummy, over and over and over again, passed on from family member to family member, is a lifestyle community, not a genetic community. Studies have proved that that's what they're talking about, but they make it sound like it's not your fault because it's genetic. It is our fault only in the sense that we continue to pass on and have those eating habits. That's the reality. So I have many other here, but I do want to say something that's important. Studies have clearly identified that people of Hispanic, African American, Native American, or Asian and Pacific Islander ethnicities, in your gene pool, you do have a greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes, because you're more sensitive to the effects of a carbohydrate diet, not because you're going to get type 2 diabetes. You see, there's a clear misunderstanding and distinction between what I just said. Those ethnicities that I just pointed out are genetically more sensitive to glucose, and thus the effects of insulin. not the fact that they are going to automatically have it. You see the difference? It's important to illustrate that. It just means that if, let's take for example, if you're African American, and I am a Caucasian, and we sit down and every day we eat the same food, day in day out at every meal, and that meal is predominantly higher in carbohydrates, I will not be as affected as my friend that has the African American ethnicity. It's just that's in our genes, but I'm still going to be suffering. Absolutely. Okay. So the point that I'm trying to make that is so absolute is that you can control your risk factor of type 2 diabetes simply by what you're eating. And if you have it, you can reverse it. And if you don't stop, it is likely that you're going to have some of, if not all, depending on your naughtiness, how bad of a type 2 diabetic and how long you've been doing it, you'll have similar, if not the same symptoms as a type 1 diabetic. And then type more than at any other rate in the history of man, type 2s are having the same fate as type 1s, having to take insulin and metformin and so on. Now, in what I read earlier, talked about that there's no risk to taking the medications. All right, if that's true, then let me read to you. Now, this is going to be long. Bear with me. I want it to be long. I want to stress the importance that this is scary stuff. I want you to be scared. Scared to death. Okay? These are the identifiable, clinically established side effects that you'll get by taking the medications that they are suggesting for type 2 diabetes. Okay? Acid or sour stomach, abdominal pain and discomfort, excessive gas in the stomach or the intestines, feeling full all the time, heartburn, indigestion, loss of appetite, metallic taste in the mouth, the passing of gas, which sounds, like if you're in high school, that's something to laugh about. It isn't something to laugh about if it's happening to you all the time and you got to work or people are around you all the time. Okay, constant stomach ache, vomiting, weight loss, but much less common to weight gain, abnormal stools, bad, unusual, or unpleasant aftertaste, a change in your taste, difficulty with moving your body, discoloration of your fingernails or toenails, flu-like symptoms, joint pain, rash, irregular pounding or racing heart or pulse, runny nose. I got 3 more columns. That's just the first one. Sneezing, runny nose, swollen joints, cough or hoarseness, decreased appetite. Did you remember earlier I said increased appetite? Okay, that's just, this thing will do all kinds of weird things. Diarrhea, fast or shallow breathing, fever or chills, general feeling of just discomfort, lower back pain or side pain, muscle pain or cramping, painful, difficult urination, sleeplessness, anxiety, blurred vision, chest discomfort, cold sweats, coma, confusion, cool, pale skin, depression, difficulty or labored breathing, dizziness, feeling of warmth, headaches, migraines, increased hunger. You heard me say decreased of appetite. Here's the opposite side. Increased sweating, nausea, nervousness, nightmares, redness of the face, neck, arms, or upper chest, seizures, shakiness, shortness of breath, slurred speech, tightness in the chest, unusual tiredness or weakness, wheezing, rare behavioral change similar to being drunk, difficulty with concentrating, drowsiness, lack of or loss of strength, restless sleep, unusual sleepiness. Now, I want you to remember some of those. Aren't those some of the symptoms that you hear about on commercials on TV that tell you to take other medications? Let me give you an example. Depression or anxiety. So let's go start taking that medication because we're taking metformin and insulin, all right? Which then we get the side effects from the anxiety and the depression medication that gives us other symptoms. And then we take other medication to stop those symptoms, and it's just a downward spiral. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying is medications can be a temporary life-saving event. I believe that men and women were inspired to create these things for a temporary benefit of mankind, not for a lifestyle change, an adoption into our who we are and what we do. That is your choice. So I will repeat with all the love in my heart, if you have type 2 diabetes, not type 1, if you have type 2 diabetes, it is absolutely your fault. But I want you to applaud the fact that it doesn't have to be your fault anymore, and that your cure and freedom from it can also be your fault. Now, you don't have to take our product. We're not the only one, but you have to do a program that is similar to it. You have to lower the amount of carbohydrates. Right now, if you're a type 2 diabetic, you're taking right around 300 to 450 grams of carbs a day. That's what caused it. Okay? And to quit it, you got to drop it down. What the studies say is 20 a day, 20 grams a day, no more than 50. 20 is just going to give you relief sooner, but 50 have shown to be effective as well. Okay? You don't have to take our product to drop it down below 50. It's just easier with ours. That's all. You're getting all your other nutrients that help you in the process. But it's not the only one. Ours just makes it simple. And it's very cost effective. So if nothing at all, please just do something. Do not do nothing. I was amazed, I was frightened, and I was saddened. When I went to this health event for 3 days, I saw men and women. Now, many of them were younger, working age. They work at a credit union. And so the average age, I would say, was probably 36, 37, right in there. And I saw these young people walking by our booth with me hearing over the next, a station next to us, how they were told that they had elevated glucose levels, their cholesterol levels were high, how they were already on blood pressure medication at 35 years old. And they walked by, and some of them did not stop at our booth and ask what they can do. They walked by, and one gentleman, I couldn't take it anymore. He was clearly overweight, had those situations, those medical symptoms that I had mentioned. He walks by, and I say, hey, grab our brochure. He says, no, I'm good, thank you. Sadly, he is not good. And I worry about those people. If you have those symptoms and you continue to do what you're doing, it's not going to stay the same. It's going to progressively get worse. It doesn't have to. Those that you know that are in that situation, love them. Love them just enough to tell them that there's hope. And it's not found at the end of a needle, through medication, or a pill and a glass of water. It's eating. Just eating the right thing. Okay? So, I just remembered that Merv told me that he had a testimony of someone. I'm going to turn on the mic. Merv, can you hear me? Merv?
I'm here.
We didn't allow that person to talk about the testimony before I go into the compensation plan. Is she out there?
I agree. Well, we have a lady from Wisconsin that's 93 years young. She's been on her program for some time. That called me today with a testimony. In fact, is real proud to have Steve print that up tomorrow, make it available to everybody. I think Emma Smith is on the call. So Emma, you want to kind of come on and share the your testimony with us, or you want Emma Smith? So Emma.
Yes. I guess what Merv said was true. I am 93 years old. Since I've been on the 3Believe, I'm feeling wonderful. But I have a problem with my eyesight, and of course something like that can be slower to be corrected. Back about 25 years at least, I had a blockage suddenly of one of my eyes. It was very unexpected, but I could not see much from that one eye. Now, 25 years ago, that's a long time, but well, Tuesday I was to see my retina specialist to see what could be done because of still some blockage there, but also floaters. He had already researched my records at KU Med Center in Kansas, so he knew what had happened and the current situation, and now, well, I've been told every time that there was nothing that they could do. But Tuesday, I found out they can do a laser treatment once the floaters are gone, and they can then see what is back there. And what they do is use laser on the blood vessels that have formed extra there. So I'm really happy that I am going to be able to see a little better. It's going to take some more time, but suddenly there is better circulation there. And since I've been on the 3Believe, and that was back January 23rd of this year that I started it.
Wow.
And so it really is working very well for me. I take no more medication or pain medicine. Just rarely that I may have to, but I was taking it once or twice every day. So, Jason, I really want to thank you for doing what you're doing. It just is really a blessing that I am seeing a little bit better and look forward to seeing even better. And Merv, I appreciate your continuing to send me information until I finally said I did as well. And so I am very happy to be feeling much better now.
Wonderful. What a wonderful testimony, and thank you very much. That is a testimony to all of us that our body, if given the right building blocks, has the ability to correct what's wrong. And that's really what's happening here. Is her body was given some key elements that it needed for it to go and fix the damage. You want to never promise that our product is a miracle cure, that it's magical. It's just providing the body with some just key elements that's in food, unadulterated with processing and artificial products, and the body knows what to do with it. Thank you very much. I wanted to also stress now, sometimes if you've been diabetic, because we've been talking about diabetes, if you've been diabetic for some period of time and you've been on the protocol and you're not over it yet, you've been on it for, let's say, a couple of months, and you're saying, Jason, I had some improvements, but I'm not over it. I still have higher blood sugar levels. Well, This is where some of the unique features of your body come into play. There are some factors that you have to realize. One, I want you to say, just have faith. Stay in it. You'll see the progress continue. But what's happened is that one is your pancreas has become slightly or severely hyperinsulinic, meaning that it has its calibration of how much insulin it's supposed to put out is all messed up. You see, when your pancreas sees 10 units, 10 units of glucose floating around in the bloodstream, it knows that 1 unit of insulin is enough to handle all 10. It's a 10-to-1 ratio. When you have hyperinsulinemia, that ratio gets messed up. Instead of 1, you have to have 2 insulin units to 10 or 5 to 10. And what happens is, as time goes on, it gets hyperinsulinic. It gets more and more. It overshoots the mark of what is needed. But it does that because it's not being successful in dropping the glucose levels down. That's what the pancreas is looking for. Its job is to keep those levels down. And then eventually the pancreas will just give up, or it starts reducing its ability to produce insulin. And that's why you have to take artificial insulin. Now, why is that happening? Because something else is happening behind the scenes. You see, your cells in your body is the one that needs to have that glucose for energy. And it doesn't have to have just glucose. It can use ketones. But in this example I'm talking about, if you're taking carbohydrates as your primary energy source, it's got to have that glucose for energy. Well, your cells do not have the ability to just go out and grab a glucose molecule and chomp it up and everything's fine because I got energy now. Insulin has to be present. It lets the cell, or notifies the cell, opens it up, and then allows the cell to receive the glucose. That's why there's that dancing relationship between insulin and glucose. They have to be paired together. But if you're always eating carbohydrates in your food, in your meals, and also in your snacking, and in your drinks, in your soda pop, and gum that you're chewing, and things that you're putting in your mouth, then what's happening is there's always the presence of insulin being secreted, and your cells get insulin resistant. They don't like having it, so they shut the door on insulin. That in turn makes your glucose levels rise because the cells are not sucking it up. And so those are the two things that's happening here that causes that problem. If you've been in that state for years, then it's going to take some time for those cells to no longer have bad relationship with the insulin. Okay, you got to give it some time. Now there's two factors. One, you got to wait till that cell dies and new cells are born. All cells don't last the same. Some of our cells last forever. The cells in our brains last forever. Our stem cells last forever. Okay, but there are other cells. The cells in our skin, they only last, our surface of our skin, it lasts for a few days. The inner lining in our stomach only lasts for hours and days. So our tissue, some of it can last for years, but most in a few months. So it can take 6 months if you have been in a state of high insulin and high glucose for a long time. Just stay at it. It will correct itself and your numbers will improve. So it's kind of, this is the general rule. How long have you been having insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia will relate to how long you have to be in a low carb diet for it to be corrected. Okay? So I wanted to go over that and just make sure you understood. We're going to shift gears for just a second. Thank you for your time. I'm going to, for those that are on the webinar, I'm going to change the view here so you can see a screen now, those that are on the webinar, and you'll be able to see this on the recording if you that you'll get tomorrow. you'll see at the top it says the compensation program. Now, those of you that checked your email today, you got this document that I'm talking about right now. So go to the first one. Down in the right-hand corner, it'll say page 1 of 14. Now, we did this on purpose. We did 1 of 14, 2 of 14, 3 of 14. We did it because if you print this off on your own printer, it's only going to print on one side. If you get it in your kit, or if you have it mailed to from us, we print on both sides. So I did it that way so that and you always will keep them in order, because the explanation to some of the keywords in this program is on the back side of that page. Let me give you an example. So if you read on the here on the compensation program, there's 3 ways to be involved with 3Believe. There's the sales representative, an SR, and there's an affiliate member, an AM, and a retail client, an RC. Okay? And you'll see that a sales representative has a little 1 after it. If you go to the back side of that same page, 2 of 14, you'll see a 1, and it'll say as a sales representative, and it gives you the description. I did it that way so that anytime you see a little number, you know that there's further explanation on the back side of that same page. Okay? So I encourage you to read those 3 distinctions, what they mean, and how we'll tell them apart. You will soon see your ability to enroll a person as a sales representative, an affiliate member, or a retail client. Now, just basically let me share with you what's the differences. A retail client is just someone that doesn't want to be in business. They don't want to sell the product. They just want to get the benefits of it. And so they will just sign on as a retail client. No obligation. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to buy a kit. They don't have to even buy the bio kit if they don't want to. I recommend that they do, but they don't have to. If you've noticed in the last few days on the website, it looks like the prices have changed. It looks like the prices have gone up. They have not gone up for you if you're a sales representative. What's being changed is the price on the website is the retail price, which is 20% higher than what you pay. Now, the coding people made a slight error. It happens. It's supposed to show both distinctions and both prices. One will say the retail price, and they'll say retail. And then underneath that, it will have a lower price, and it'll say wholesale. I do that because I want to be transparent. I want the retail customers to know that they can get it at a cheaper price if they want to. And then all they have to do is find out what it takes to be a wholesale representative. You see, legally, the government they force us, if we don't want to be in trouble with the government, to make a clear, logical distinction, have it be transparent, of the benefits of why we pay you a commission and why and what it takes to be a wholesale representative. There has to be some clear benefits and responsibilities. One of the benefits is that you pay a lower price, and you get that privilege because you're a wholesale member. It's not offered to just everybody. You got to do something for it. Okay? An affiliate member is just someone that wants to get their product for free, is essentially what it is. They'll never get a check from 3Believe, but they'll get 3B credits that's equal to $1, and that can be applied to products online. So basically what that means is they can sign people up, and they can build downline, and they can put people anywhere. They can do the exact same things that a sales rep can do, but they'll just never get actual money. They'll get credit towards their account, thereby getting their product for free or at a reduced price, depending on how many 3B credits they have. Okay? So on the flip side, you'll see the explanation of each one of the terms, and then you'll see on the following pages the breakout. Now, because I spent so much time on the diabetes, I'll go through the compensation in more detail later at another time, so this doesn't go on past our hour mark. But you'll see that I've gone through great illustration and great detail of explaining what and how our compensation plan works. It explains the generational bonus. It has the amounts and limits there. I'll explain the rules of that next week. It explains how, and I'll put that in practical terms too while we're talking about it, meaning how what that would mean financially, why you want to build your business a certain way, and on how fair it can be. We have some features here that I've promised. The placement building feature, for one, that means you can place anybody in your organization that you want, and how you are not penalized for doing that. Then there's also a feature called split commission. This is great for leaders, so that someone down in your group that just needs a lot of help, but let's say they're 20 levels down. How and why would you help them when they're 20 levels down? Because you can have a split commission. So the both of you are splitting the commission for any person that's being enrolled. But that's as far as that split commission goes, and it goes into detail for those features. So again, this is up on our website. If you go to the let me show you on the screen here. If you go to the website, let me get this in the right place. Here, sorry about my. So if you go to the website and you go up in the top browser where it says About 3Believe, and you'll see 3B Business is the first one. You click on that and it'll say Compensation Plan. When you click on Compensation Plan, you'll see the first item being the 3B Compensation Plan. You click on it and you'll see the document that I was just talking about. So hopefully that sheds a little light on it. Thank you again for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Merv, see if there's any questions that I can answer. Are you there, Merv?
I am sure here. Good call.
Well, thank you.
And that's fantastic, man.
Okay, is there any questions?
Did you say there are 80 million people that has type 2 diabetes? Is that what you said?
No, there's 8 million that are walking around with type 2 diabetes that don't know it.
Don't even know it. And 30 million that has it.
Yeah, to be accurate, it's about 28 million, but I rounded it up to 30.
My goodness, that's just incredible.
Yeah. Oh, well, the thing that's frightening is that in about 20 years, that number is going to balloon to about 120 million.
My goodness.
Yeah, by the way, that's what the CDC says, or that's what they call an epidemic. It's growing so fast, those levels are at epidemic levels. Yeah. Terrible. Well, it doesn't sound like there's any questions.
Might be questions?
I did okay then.
Yeah, you did fantastic. So,
Good.
any questions? Anyone? No questions? Good.
All right. Well, good night. Thank you again. And next week we'll go right out of the chute. We'll talk about the compensation plan in detail and some strategies on how to effectively build your organization.
Sounds good.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
God bless you. Good night.
God bless everybody.